Hello and good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to Tea Time SEO. I hope everyone has got their cup of tea or coffee or juice, whatever it is you prefer to drink in the morning. Jamie's dialing in from Colorado, so it's 9 a.m. her time. It's truly an international tea time today. I'm SEO Joe Bloggs. I'm calling in from Barcelona. We have Carrie from Authoritas, from Putney. Jessica is dialing in from Basingstoke near London, and Georgie is dialing in from East London. So we've got an East-West London team today, and Jamie's dialing in from Colorado, Denver, Colorado. So really excited to have Georgie, Jamie, and Jess here with us today. We're going to be talking about technical SEO. So if you've always wanted to learn about how to get into tech SEO, where to start, any different aspects, you're at the right place. And we at Authoritas, actually, we've just launched our brand new website. So we have a lot of tech SEO questions ourselves for the speakers. But without further ado, I'd like to pass over and they can introduce themselves. If you are enjoying the videos, of course, click a nice little like button and also subscribe to our channels, because we continue to have our ultimate guides throughout the rest of the month. So I'll just pass over. You are Georgie.
Fab. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today. So my name's Georgie. I'm a SEO executive at a digital marketing agency in Nottingham called Impression. I specialise in technical SEO, and I'm pretty fascinated with conversational AI and its impact within search. During the pandemic, I joined a global grassroots initiative called Find the Masks to help organisations and people source free PPE. And I'm also a Women in Tech SEO mentor. In my spare time, you'll catch me reading vast amounts of empowerment books, then tackling sustainability topics head on. I'll pass over to Jamie.
Hello, lovely humans. My name is Jamie Alberico. I'm not a robot, but a speak bot. I have spent the past decade working in-house on agencies, SaaS teams, working next to developers, making really cool things that benefit humans, and also search engines seem to like. My bio right here is entirely accurate. I am an unqualified adult when not working who loves string cheese. This is also just one of the amazing answers for my "someone please write my bio" question on Twitter. So thank you, whomever listed me as a life coach to help you unlock your greatest potential. I appreciate all your sweet lies. And this is Jess.
My name's Jess. I am a Senior Technical SEO Consultant at Erudite. We're a technical marketing agency just based outside London in the UK. One of my favourite things to do is to bug our CRO team. I love working with them to try and find kind of joint strategies and joint projects to work on that have a CRO and an SEO benefit. During lockdown, I published the UK Accessibility Benchmark, which looked at the top 200 domains in the UK and how accessible they are. And outside of work, I do a lot of powerlifting, and so I'm either training or I'm walking the dogs.
Great, thank you very much, everyone. Some impressive bios, and also what you were doing outside of work too. I'd just like to say welcome everyone for joining us. Paul, Barry, Azim, Olivia, and other people that are not signed in. Please drop your questions in the chat, and Carol will be able to ask the speakers on your behalf. But without further ado, Karen and I will go behind the scenes, and over to you three.
Fab, thanks, Joe. So today I'm going to be touching on a beginner's guide to technical SEO, and I'll be discussing this in a lot more depth within the guides that are going to be published on the Authoritas site in, I think, around like a couple of weeks' time. So I think it's just loading in now. Yeah, so what really is technical SEO? I think that's like a big question we should probably start off with. So in short, technical SEO refers to the process of optimizing your website for the crawling and indexing phase. The goals between technical SEO and other SEO channels are pretty much shared. However, the technical SEO strategies are there to create solid foundations between both on-page and off-page strategies to work efficiently. But before we dive into technical SEO practices and how to complete audits, it's crucial that we go through the absolute fundamentals, these being the understanding of how websites work, how search engines understand websites, and then how users interact with websites. Thank you. And so for today's time purposes, I'll be outlining how search engines understand websites as this transfers across all three pillars of SEO. So how the search engine works? As shown in this visualization here, search engines work by crawling billions of pages throughout the web using hyperlinks. So to do this, search engines will use their own crawlers, as also known as search engine bots or spiders. Once a new page has then been discovered, it can then sent to be rendered and indexed. Various authority and relevance metrics are then scored to ensure that the most relevant results are then retrieved against the search query in the search engine. However, as a huge rise in JavaScript-powered websites, Google realized they had to start rendering web pages more like modern browsers. So back in 2018, they introduced the second wave of indexing. So if a page has JavaScript in it, the rendering is actually deferred until Google has the resources ready to then render the client-side content, and then they'll index the content further a bit later. So today I'll be covering a couple of tips. So my first tip would be to be a lot more human during your auditing process. So I'd probably say like the first point of call, it's always encouraged to manually audit your site. So just in the way that a Google bot and users would interact with your site and navigate it, just try and get familiar with the site as a whole. So look at the overall site architecture, high value, low value pages, how's the internal linking working, and really get a feel of it there. From there, I'd probably try and identify different technologies that the website's built on. I like to use the Chrome extension Wappalizer just to quickly have a look what a website's built on. And then from there, I'll try and analyze what tools would be best to use to crawl the site. I'd also continue to troubleshoot the site from accessibility, crawlability, indexability, all these different areas of the site, and then always make it bespoke to every single audit. And then it's also really important to understand who are you actually delivering your audit to. So this will help to really structure your recommendations. So if it's being delivered straight to a developer, these recommendations should be incredibly concise and actionable. But if it's being delivered to other stakeholders who may not come from more of like a technical background or might not have a real understanding of SEO, then these could be more considering what the likely outcome could be. So it could be the return on investment or talking around the KPIs that the recommendation is looking to tackle. This is something that Jess and Jamie will discuss shortly. And then my second tip would be everyone has their own lane, maintain yours. So as cliche as that does sound, I'd probably say this is something that's really resonated with me lately. So as someone that doesn't come directly from a web development background and is very much self-taught, I'd say that it's imperative to try and not be fazed by those around you that may have more experience or have been in the industry a lot longer than you. So technical SEO as a whole is pretty much a learning curve and comes with all the analysis that you complete. So no matter if you're working in an agency, in-house, freelance, try and audit as many sites as possible, whether that be utilizing a crawling tool, manually auditing, or a combination of both. This will then give you exposure to a range of issues, range of websites that you can then look out for in the future, and then also lean on others around you. And as a final note, I just want to say that technical SEO as a discipline is something that can't be taught overnight. It's ever evolving and knowledge comes with time. So keep at it, keep updated with all the different industry news. Twitter is great for that. Take the time to really empower those around you, as diverse thinking really does breed creativity in all senses of life, as well as technical SEO issues. So that's everything from me. I'm now going to pass over to Jamie.
Thank you so very much, Georgie. I think you did a great job of that. My tips are going to be very focused on the human aspect, because ultimately, if you're joining me right now, you're a human who has some coffee, has some tea, maybe has whiskey in your mug. I am not here to judge you. What I am here to do is tell you, if you are currently a tech SEO or you are considering that path, take a deep breath and relax. This is one of the hardest aspects of our industry. I'm lucky to know so many brilliant people and be able to reach out and talk to them and even just have that human experience. As a member of Women in Tech SEO, I can't tell you how many times Arij has just helped me calm down and like been there for me as a human, because this is an amazing supportive group. If you are a woman in tech SEO out there, please look into that fantastic supportive community. You can get a great mentor there. But one of the biggest problems I think a lot of us face in tech SEO is burnout. If we don't relax, if we think we can do it all, we're going to burn ourselves out. You are not going to know it all. And if you do take the time to learn it, it is going to update. I will never forget the time that I did not check the developer documentation before I went ahead and used the URL removal tool, not knowing that I had changed at this point. I think it was like 2015, so that it would follow redirects and remove whatever the resolving was. So when I tried to remove the non-secure version from index, I actually ended up removing my entire site for half a day. By the time my boss finally called me back from several panic pings and a voicemail, I had resubmitted everything, done as much as I could, calculated how much revenue it had cost us, and run about 5 miles. Was panting. This is a thing that you will do because there's so much out there, and it's a tenacity, it's a quality of tech SEOs that makes us great. But ultimately, that thin line between ambition and masochism must be minded. You have to honor that you're not going to know everything, and that's okay. And there is no perfect world of tech. There's always a calculated risk. And understanding and calculating what kind of risk you are facing with whichever endeavor you are going to try and tackle here. Ask the dumb questions, even if it's making a note in your notebook to follow up with whomever was speaking and say, what did you mean by this word? Because so often, the majority of my work has been translating between different groups, because ultimately we all have the same goal. We all want to make good things, but when we're using different languages, we get wires crossed, and that can make it very difficult to communicate. It may seem antagonistic. It may seem contrarian, because our understandings of the basic things we're working at are different words to us. It's okay. It's encouraged to take time and just approach the very basic assumptions. Listen to these smart people. So I have worked across dozens of JavaScript frameworks. I have worked with multiple e-commerce platforms, everything from that homebrew of high ambitions that a button that says is active actually controlled the indexability of a page, which that is not what that button should do. We had to break the site's spine. But I had to learn this and figure out solutions by just sitting and listening to people talk, even when it wasn't something answering my question, just listening to developers brainstorm and work things out, because they understand facets and aspects of a site that you might not. Talking to the database architects and managers, like they know their way around that bog of eternal stench. There are unlisted foreign keys that still haunt me to this day. But I was able to find reasonable solutions by taking time to make that human connection and learn from someone else. Honestly, if you want to sustain yourself in this career path, set apart like 30% of your time to learn minimum. You need it. We all need it. And everything's changing all the time. You know, Google came out in 2018 at I/O and they're like, by the way, so JavaScript's a little bit problematic for us. Could you just go ahead and do some dynamic rendering? Basically blow up your stack and make 2 versions of the site and pray that they do the same thing on both ends. The next year at I/O, the conversation around rendering was like, are bad, and directed in some new ways to render. But because it wasn't John Mew up front, people didn't quite pay attention the same way they had the year previous. It's okay to go and sit in on a session, open up a Google developers YouTube playlist that you have no idea about, because at least you'll learn the words. When we start to learn the words of a different group, we start to understand how they work and how that plays into a larger picture of all of us making something good. My final request to you, and Brad, if you're listening to this, I still adore you, but I will murder you for sending in so many tickets that were like, website broke, please help. I get website break all the time. Website broke right now. We probably just didn't know about it. But if you don't tell me how it's broken, if you don't give me a specific page to go to with reproduction steps, go to this URL, interact like this, click this thing. You need to be very specific in explaining what broke, how did it break, when does it break? Because sometimes these things are conditional. And when we dig even deeper into these enterprise level sites, sometimes they have a tendency to break, a tendency to exist because we have so many systems interacting. That's, I think, fundamentally where a lot of the value of tech SEO comes from, is not that we are walking Wikipedias of all this tech knowledge, but that we understand the bespoke nature of systems interacting for a specific company and maintain the lens of their business goals and KPIs with it. So when you submit a ticket, please put your reproduction steps. I expected to see this. I saw this instead. In order for you to see this thing, do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When you write a ticket to add a new feature in, as X, I want to Y in order to Z. Give that user story and write the acceptance criteria. What defines this being successful? What defines this ticket being complete? What is our testing strategy once it gets into a lower environment? Get involved with that QA team. I swear, QAs are oracles. They are the magical tomes of all knowledge. They have broken the site in more ways than you can imagine. They are the most useful allies you can have. Be kind. Everybody out there is a human. Humans are tired. They have long days. They have burnt out minds. It's okay to offer that grace, and offer that grace to yourself. And also listen to these two, because they're far better than me at this bit. So with that, let's get Jessie in here. She's going to give you some great insights. Thank you all.
Thanks, Jamie. That was really, really great, both of you. And I think some stuff we can build on when we start to look at how to best get your tech SEO recommendations actually implemented. So what we tend to find is that tech SEO generally needs a developer, and developers are busy, and they tend to be a really stretched resource. They're always triaging requests from all over the business, and even if you're not presenting the recommendations directly to the developer, some stakeholder that's picking up your recommendations has to look at it and decide, is this a priority? Are other things more pressing? What do we have to do here? So I have 2 big tips for you guys today. The first one is to make your recommendation a priority, and I'm going to talk briefly about how we can do that. And then the second one is going to be talking about quickly how to make it as easy and clear to understand and implement as possible for your developer to pick up and run with. So the first thing I want to talk about is the idea of a hypothesis framework. So when you're presenting a recommendation, this could look like something along the lines of, if you're trying to compress some images because you want to improve your page speed, or maybe you want to convert all your PNGs to JPEGs or to WebP, or whatever you want to do. So we can say that we know that speed impacts conversion rate and rankings. So we believe that compressing these images or making them WebP or whatever will improve speed by X%, which will result in improvements of X revenue or X conversion rate, or a click uplift of Y, which can translate into a bottom line revenue of Z, or form completions, or whatever conversion we're kind of aiming towards. What this allows us to do is allows a stakeholder that's picking up these recommendations to really understand, right, what's the impact of this? How much of a priority is it? Next thing I want to talk about is the idea of running small-scale tests to prove the value of what you're recommending. So if you don't really know and you can't sort of plug this into a hypothesis framework in the same way you could with maybe a speed recommendation, perhaps you want to look at canonical tags or hreflang or structured data or something like that. You can run a small test on a small area of the site, measure that against the rest of the site to see if there is a performance change, and then you can use that to plug into some sort of hypothesis or a forecast or a model that gives your stakeholders or your client a little bit more insight into what the impact on their business is going to be. So a really nice way of doing that is things like, I use Google Tag Manager a lot, particularly for things like structured data. It's really easy. You can set it on a handful of pages, build your structured data, watch what happens, and then you've got the perfect proof that this is going to do X, Y, and Z for your site. The final thing for making your recommendation a priority, and I would call this a bit of a last ditch, I suppose, a last ditch attempt, is to present support from search engine documentation. I tend to avoid this if there's another way that we can prove value, because we want to have tangible value, like a small scale test or something like that. But in the case of something like Core Web Vitals coming up, we know it's probably a good idea to be looking at this and to be resolving any kind of glaring issues, but we don't know what sort of an impact this is going to have when it becomes a ranking factor next year. So you can present some support to say, this is going to be an issue for us, or this could impact on us next year, so we need to get a jump on that. So the second thing I really want to talk about is basically to help your developer out. Like I said, they tend to be really stretched. They've got a lot of stuff to triage. So avoid solutionizing is the first thing. Try and explain your problem, explain what you want to see, what a solution would be, or what you would consider a successful resolution to your issue, and work with them to find a solution. Like Jamie was saying, they know the site way, way better than you do. They've been under the hood far more than you have. So try and work with them to find the perfect solution. Again, like Jamie said, be specific. Try to explain exactly what you need. They don't want to become an SEO expert before they start to implement your recommendations. So don't send them a link to a Google guideline. Send them a code example, or send them a snippet or an example of a site in the wild that's doing exactly what you want to achieve perfectly that they can then refer to. So for example, if you want some canonical tags implemented, don't ask for canonical tags. Give them a little code snippet as an example. Give them some real life URL examples from your site and what you would like to see on those URLs. And the final thing I really want to look at and talk about is making your recommendations realistic. It's really easy to get carried away and to kind of want to chase this holy grail of perfect, all singing, all dancing solutions to your problems or to your recommendations. But again, these developers are really, really busy, and ultimately you've got to have a bit of an opportunity cost here. It might be great to have your perfect, all singing, all dancing solution, but it might not develop or deliver as much ROI as the next best thing or the compromise. So look for small step changes and slowly moving the needle rather than huge projects and huge revamps, and try to make sure your recommendations are realistic to implement.
Great, thank you very much, all of you three, for sharing those tips today. We had loads of examples and recommendations from Georgie, Jamie, and Jess. For those in the audience, let us know if you have any questions, and then we can answer to your heart's content. But I think we've got a couple anyway in that. I'll pass over to Carrie now.
Great, thank you. So first question we have is for Georgie. There are lots of different discussions about JavaScript, such as it being bad for SEO. Can you clarify and explain JavaScript, for example, what JavaScript rendering is?
Yeah, sure thing. So I was kind of like discussed it a bit earlier, but I know that it's a lot more complex than what I went into. I know that Martin Split mentioned, I think it was like earlier this year, that the two-wave indexing isn't really a thing. I think it's definitely a thing from my perspective. It's something that JavaScript websites aren't going to go anywhere. Like they really aren't. They work well. They're fast at the end of the day, and it's kind of Google's next steps that they need to index these and render these websites a lot better than they are today. I think it's just something that we need to look out for, and probably something that we need to get under the hood and try and understand, because I don't think that these search engines are going to tell us exactly how they render and index everything here. But yeah, it's definitely a thing. It's not going to go away anytime soon. And it's something that SEOs we're going to have to continue to tackle.
Great, thank you. And we have a question for Barry. Jess, can you answer this? How do you estimate the impact of a particular tech SEO issue?
So there's a few different ways that we can do that. Sometimes it is just a little bit finger in the air, or it's a little bit of kind of instinct and experience. But for me, my preferred way of estimating impact is to run a test of some kind. So a lot of things can be implemented with Tag Manager. I wouldn't suggest as a kind of final implementation, but for a test, they're perfect. This is something I've been doing recently with a client. We build the structured data in GTM, inject it as custom HTML on a subset of pages, and then just record any uplift. Did what we expect to happen, or did something else happen? Did we see a performance uplift? Did we not? And then you can use that and extrapolate that data across the whole site and your existing data for the rest of the site. That is my preferred way of doing it. Like I say, it's not always possible, and sometimes it does have to be a little bit instinct and experience. But if you can test it.
Great, thank you. And Jamie, you said allocate 30% of your time to learn SEO. Where do you recommend we start?
Wonderful change to how Google even approaches the webmaster analyst was they used to be a separate team. So the webmaster analysts were like over here in this little pocket. And if you guys remember the good old bad days of 2015, you would find 4 different versions of developer documentation on how to do a thing with no dates. And then you had to go to archive.org and figure out which ones to run through. Well, that's all kind of been sorted out. And now that the webmaster analyst team is under Google developers, we have really good documentation coming out. Lizzie Harvey is writing up fantastic pieces that really go into detail, providing code examples. There's code labs integrated into this documentation now. If you want to get started on this tech route, go to the Google developers version of how search works, of their search guide. And that's meant to teach devs how search engines work. They gave, I think, that talk for the first time at Chrome Dev Summit in 2019, one of the two. It was amazing to see how many developers were excited about this. So start there, and it actually gives you a common ground, common language with your developers as well. There's rabbit holes all over the place depending on what you want to learn. You start clicking deep enough into those links, you'll get into Google Docs that are linked from proper documentation. Some of them you have to request access to, and sometimes you're granted access. So say you want to learn more about rendering, particularly with JavaScript. There's fantastic documentation out there about different ways to load a page so the content written in the DOM, as opposed to that initial HTML, is discoverable. And it'll give you a code lab, which means you get to break code without having to set everything up first. So it's all the fun of knocking over dominoes, but none of the time of setting it up. It's a way that you can wipe it and start over again. Hop in there, use code labs, read just the new documentations coming out. There's a recently updated page that you can find on the developer's documentation. Start there.
Great, thank you. And finally, we have a question from Barry Adams again. For any of you to answer. Any experience with Edge SEO, like using CDNs like Cloudflare,
Yep.
or Distilled Ion to make changes to sites?
I have a very good experience with CDNs, and I will tell you my favorite lesson that I learned with them. So CDNs often have a bot manager system in them, which is a way of going, hi, don't DDoS me. They frequently have built in a whitelist of, hey, these are friendly bots. These are our ones we want to crawl our site. Then they have these things called trigger thresholds, which say if a behavior, say a bot requests 60 URIs in a second, we're going to go ahead and block that thing because it's up to no good. These two lists do not know about each other. And if your site make an improvement, it gets very healthy, Google starts engaging with it at an escalated rate, they will accidentally tar pit Googlebot. There's no intentional explicit rule in there saying you should tar pit Googlebot, but they hit a threshold trigger.
Great, thank you. Does anyone else have anything to contribute?
Yeah, no, I've done some stuff with Azure SEO, and like Jamie said, I've encountered that exact same problem. But it can be really nice from a kind of a vanity URL if what we've done before is where clients wanted to author in a blog into the main domain where they were previously sat on a subdomain. But couldn't for some kind of stack reason. You can use Edge SEO and service workers to sort of dynamically change URLs on the fly. So you can author it from blog dot to /blog, for example, if you don't want your blog or your content or any area of the site to sit on a subdomain anymore, which we've had a lot of success with. So that's been really cool. And I think that's actually something that Shopify have just recently updated their Cloudflare integration to allow you to do that, so you can now kind of work around those classic Shopify /pages and /collections and /products that they used to kind of force you to use in your URL structure. So I think that's really interesting. They only announced it a few months ago, but it would be really interesting to see how we can play with that and re-architect some sites in a slightly more SEO friendly way, I suppose.
Great, thank you. Well, we've had quite a few more questions come in, and I think if we take them to Twitter, because that's all we have time for today, and we'll see you guys next week. I'll hand back over to Joe.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, we've got a few more over Twitter. So Georgie, Jamie, and Jess all have their Twitter handles there. So please ask over Twitter. We will be tagging them right after the show. We've got one from Angela just around recommending hreflang tags. Should you include country codes as opposed to just language codes from international SEO perspective? Also, Safa Designs is asking about, would you avoid using CDNs like Cloudflare? So, we've got a few more coming through, and, also just about maybe from us, how would you guys recommend, the time to allocate to learn tech SEO? And actually, can you ever say that, oh yeah, I know everything, or not? So we'll continue those questions over on Twitter. Thank you very much for joining us today, and also for being part of the Women in Tech SEO community. I myself have learned a lot from the community. It's a great support network. And thank you to our audience as well for joining us today. We're going to be back next week, same time, 4 p.m. for your cup of tea or coffee or drink, whatever you like. We're going to talk about user intent. We have Ben Gary, Dave Davies, and Rick Rodriguez joining us. So stay tuned for that. And do continue the conversation on Twitter. And then Jamie, Jess, and Georgie will be able to answer your questions. So thank you very much, and we'll see you in a week.